Hello, Flat Earth researchers, debaters and debunkers. Here's just another shot of a sunset off the west coast of Phuket in southern Thailand. And if we didn't think too much about it, or didn't begin to even question what we are seeing, we could assume, because we've always been told this is the case, that the sun is setting because we are on the outside of a spherical Earth and that it's rotating away from the sun, causing it to set and be cut off at the horizon. Seems like a perfectly reasonable and logical explanation, right? Considering that it's already been determined as fact, scientific fact indeed, that we are on a rotating globe, spinning and going around the sun at incredible speeds. And of course, this would mean that here on or near the equator where this shot was taken, I would be almost perpendicular to someone living in Northern Europe, for example. That's not anything that's ever been proven to be a scientific measurable fact. It's just an assumption and an explanation that goes with the previous assumption that we live on a globe because we wanted to assume that we are inhabiting a heliocentric system. But this photograph of the sunset is unique, just as any view of the sunset is unique to the observer and the weather and conditions that are affecting the view at the time. So what we can see here as we zoom in is that the sun is being cut off, but not at the horizon of the surface, but it is being cut off by the increasingly dense air, which is rather close at the moment because at this time of year it is very hazy. There's a lot of humidity and dust and other things in the air which make visibility quite poor, and we can see from the lower portion of this that we do not have a very clearly defined horizon, simply because the air is a lot more denser with vapor and other particles, making it difficult to see through. And so of course what's happening here is this layer of dense air above the surface of the water is in fact cutting off the sun, and once it goes beyond this point then we don't see the sun anymore. However, it did stay light for a while after this. So in terms of perspective and envisaging ourselves being on a level stationary Earth with a sun that's doing concentric circles or elliptical orbits above the stationary Earth, this observation fits perfectly with that assumption of being on a flat Earth, because we have a sun that is much higher than the dense layer of air that's in front of us, that is going off into the distance, and of course as it does so the layer of dense air is cutting it off as the sun goes further away from us. This is a repeatable, demonstrable, scientific explanation for the observation that we see. And if we did in fact gain some elevation, if we suddenly flew up into the air, we would then see the full sun again, because we would be in a position that put us at a higher elevation than the dense air that is blocking our view very close to the surface. So going up into the air and seeing the sun set again doesn't automatically mean that you are living on the outside of a rotating sphere. It literally is the fact that the higher you get, then the further you can see, or the easier it is to see over things that are blocking your view when you are at a low altitude. This is just a very normal, perfectly reasonable, demonstrable and repeatable explanation of what we are seeing. So all you have to do from seeing this particular image is to consider what would happen if the air was a little bit less dense or less hazy above the surface, and we could see a greater distance across the surface because our view wasn't being so quickly blocked. Well, then what would happen is this layer of dense air or mist or haze, if it was less dense, it would appear further away, and then it would become a narrower band. We would have less distance between the horizon on the surface. We would be able to see a more distant horizon on the surface, and because this layer of dense air would be further away, it would become a narrower and narrower band. So on a very clear day, when we see the sun appear to set at the horizon and appear to get cut off at the horizon, all that's happening is that there is a point in the distance where the density of the air blocks off anything beyond it, just as we are seeing here, but it's just so much further away that it is a much, much thinner band on the horizon, and it will cut off the sun, and it will, for all intents and purposes, appear that the sun is getting cut off by some kind of hard horizon considered to be geometric curvature that we see on the surface. But all that happens is we have there's a limit to how far we can ever see. And on this particular day, it's a very short limit. It's obscuring our view of a horizon. And it is cutting off the sun, just as we see the sun get cut off every day, but usually just a bit further away. To illustrate what I'm saying here, we can just take this photograph and copy the lower half and raise that to simulate the decreasing distance or gap that we would see between the surface and the sun if conditions were better and the haze above the surface of the water was further away, or we could see further before the density of that haze became so much that it blocked off the sun. And so if we do that, we can see a decreasing gap. All I'm doing here is simulating a decreasing gap because we are simulating the layer of haze above the surface of the earth getting further and further away, and it would become such a thin layer in a very great distance that we wouldn't be able to discern the difference between the horizon we see on the surface and an apparently thin layer of haze or cloud that could be tens or hundreds of meters high, but of course at a great distance we just wouldn't see it. It would just be part of the horizon. So whether we see the sun setting there on the horizon, or whether we see it setting above clouds like this, we are seeing the same thing. We are seeing the sun get cut off simply due to the limits of visibility. Thank you very much. Click subscribe and the bell icon if you'd like to receive notifications of new videos from Phuket Word.